and welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Sana Maqbool, with you at B2B World, and with me are Farrukh, Pitafi and Raja Faisal. In today's show, we're going to be talking about a very important day that is going to be observed today on both sides of the line of control. It is Black Day that is going to be observed tomorrow in Pakistan, of course, also in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And this is, of course, an important day in the history of the struggle of the people of Kashmir. It was on this day back in 1947 that Indian troops took over and violated the partition plan and against the aspirations of the Kashmiri people to control of the territory. And this is important, especially in terms of the number of years that have passed since then and how the struggle in fact continues. And not only that, in fact, it has deteriorated much further with the occupied valley becoming the most militarized zone of the world. And because of that, where we stand today in 2023, it's really important for us to be able to reflect back on this day and observe it in a manner that calls for attention from the international community. Again, something that unfortunately has been lacking for quite some time now, especially since the unilateral actions of August 2019. This is even more important that these days and these events are highlighted with the international community to make sure that the people of Kashmir and their voices are heard and their aspirations and their right to self-determination is met. Unfortunately, we haven't really seen progress moving towards this direction, and we salute the brave and resilient people of the valley who are still struggling against the Indian occupation forces and the huge number and the depth of human rights violations that exist within this territory. So we're going to be taking a look back at the struggle and try to understand what has happened since 27th October in 1947 till date, and then what sort of future do we plan to see, and for that what needs to be done, both from people, of course, within the occupied valley who are still struggling, and for countries like Pakistan who have always extended their political, moral and diplomatic support. But perhaps there's time to do more, and for the international community also to take cognizance of what is going on and then also act accordingly. So we're going to be taking a look at all of this and see what really is going to be the ways in which this particular day is highlighted, and of course through this the struggle. We've been joined, of course, by Farrukh and Faisal in the studios. We've also been joined online by Mr. Altaf Hussain Wani, who's a senior leader APHC, and Dr Awais Bin Wasi, who's also a Kashmir expert. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us and being part of the discussion. We'll take a short break and continue our discussion when we come back. Welcome back to the debate. We're going to be starting our conversation as to the observance of Black Day that is going to be tomorrow, and of course the struggle of the Kashmiri people. For this, of course, as I've introduced earlier, we have been joined by Farrukh and Faisal in the studios, and Mr. Altaf Hussain Wani and Dr. Awais Bin Wasi online. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of the debate. And let me start with you, Wani Saab. The discussion around, of course, the Black Day is important, especially when we look back at what happened in 1947. And I understand there is also a call for a shutdown in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir by APHC as well. And of course, these days are important to highlight what has happened in the past, and of course, since then, the kind of struggle that continues till date. And I want to understand then what will be the objective and the way that you're going to be taking a look at the situation tomorrow, and what sort of hope that exists in terms of any difference that's going to make, or the ripples it's going to create, or influence certain quarters, not just within the territory, but of course outside in the international community as well. And whether or not, when we take a look back at the many Black Days that we have observed over the years, do you see any hope of a different way that the community is actually going to react? And if so, where exactly do you and the people of Kashmir derive that hope from?
Thank you, Sana, for having me. We have been observing for the last 7 and it continues till the goal is achieved. But what is aside from this, try to remind ourselves generations as well as to the international community that this was the unfortunate day Indian forces and in Kashmir and occupied the territory. And since then, people of Kashmir are suffering at the hands of Indian occupational army and their other agents. This is why this day is created like this day, observed as this day, and why we uh, create awareness on this day. And also throughout the year, we are trying to create the awareness about the Indian occupation, the atrocities Indian forces are committing in occupied Kashmir and all that. What will be different? I don't think there is anything different that we could do under the present circumstances. What we can do, we will do that. That is at each and every international headquarters, at the embassies of Pakistan and overseas Kashmiris are observing this day as Black Day. They will organize seminars, webinars, protest rallies around the globe to galvanize support for that, to create more awareness. Under the circumstances, we see much attention is either on the Gaza or it is on Ukraine and other crises, and Kashmir crisis, Kashmir situation is not on the international radar. But our duty is to keep knocking on these doors and to keep the Kashmir situation on the international vigil so that the goodwill prevails at the international community fulfills its promises which were made by them with the people of Kashmir that they will decide their political future and not aligning with the people of Kashmir but aiding and assisting the oppressor which they have been doing for long will not good for the peaceful existence of the people of this region.
Right. Dr. Awais, when we take a look at the struggle of the people of Kashmir and the number of decades that have passed, of course, there is always this question of why isn't the world responding or doing something about it, even though, of course, there are UN Security Council resolutions and perhaps certain condemnations from one quarter or the other. But more than that, it's only rhetoric that we get to see, and perhaps not much in terms of actual tangible influence on the Indian occupation forces or on platforms that really matter, or from countries that can actually perhaps do something about it. How do you expect that aspect to change? Is the onus is on the way that this issue is being projected or talked about? Or is it about the understanding of what's going on? Or is it that irrespective of all of that, the political or economic factors will remain and there isn't much that's actually being done or can be done to change that?
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share my view on this Black Day, which is going to be observed tomorrow. Apropos your question about the expected response from the world community or from the powers that be, that is unfortunate. And the reason is that, as we oft say in international relations, that in international relations, you are either at the table or on the menu. When we were, in a position when these United Nations resolutions adopted in 1948, 49, and then later on in 1957, as many as 13 UNCIP, UNSC resolutions adopted. So at that time, perhaps geopolitical considerations, the global considerations were in our favor, and we have had that locus standi. But with the passage of time, perhaps the morality in international global order becomes the casualty. And in this contemporary world, where morality is not a point of reference, these issues, as you have just mentioned in the opening documentary, Palestine, Kashmir, uh, uh, it couldn't get that desired response. But despite having this criminal silence from powers that be, powerful world capitals and international organizations, I think it's our responsibility that we are at high sailing moral ground, and we have a legal position which we must espouse and which we must advocate, and we must project to the concerned forum. So this day, in fact, on 27th of October, tomorrow, that we'll have the events, activities, in which I think that we should take stock of the current policy, Kashmir policy, take stock of our, efforts that we are making, in different domains. And after having reviewing that situation, we should formulate some, policy, including some measures which could affect the global community. One aspect that I think that we can do is that we should create discourse and literature in languages other than English in order to increase our outreach, especially in the European countries. That I think we must do that. And the second thing is that as I was just listening a documentary which Altaf and Wani had Saab has just shared with me about the, Prime Minister, current caretaker Prime Minister. He was also making his perspective and on Kashmir. That documentary was particularly formulated on Kashmir, and in which Dr. Sufi, leading lawyer of the country, he was also saying that we should also project this case, internationally as under Chapter 7, because United Nations resolution, there was a lot of confusion surrounding around these resolutions. Some people say that these resolutions were adopted under Chapter 6. That is why these are not enforceable. And some people, as Dr. Saab was just mentioning, that these resolutions could be considered as the ones adopted under Chapter 7, which are enforceable and which are binding in nature. And such kind of legal, I think, perspective we should advance. And second thing that he also mentioned is that this issue of international humanitarian law, since he has been saying, and we have also been, saying it in different programs, in different seminars, that we should, formulate our legal case in such a way that could have more potential buyers of this case in informed circle. I think these are some measures that we should take, and we should advance that perspective of international fora, so that we can increase our sport base at international level. And one thing in the last that I would say is that despite the fact that despite these global and geopolitical realities, it's our belief and it's our conviction, being a Kashmiri and being a student of international relations, that ultimately people who made sacrifice or rendered sacrifices and laid their lives for the cause of freedom and justice, I think the day will come that they will achieve this objective one day.
Right, and of course that is the hope, and that is what we want to see sooner rather than later. But Faisal, when we of course take a look at the struggle and the number of years that have passed, it's quite unfortunate that generations have gone through this trouble and are still continuing to do so, and unfortunately perhaps their lives are becoming even more difficult, and the continuing to suffer as we speak. But then I want to understand that given the current scenario, or the way that we have seen the way that the country in itself is also something that is being talked about, not just within the occupied territory, but of course within India as well, as not secular or democratic as it poses to be, and in terms of the protection of its minorities, and including Muslims and others as well. Then when we take a look at the situation in the illegally occupied territory, it seems that it is not far away from what is going on in terms of who's responsible, and in terms of what's happening within the country, and what is more relevant. So it's perhaps not just the cause of the people of Kashmir, but also what is going on within India that's important, and perhaps that connect in terms of for people to understand who it is that's actually calling the shots. But do you think that this perhaps is something that is looked at as two different aspects completely and something that is not related to each other? Because it seems that when we talk about the issue of Kashmir and the people of Kashmir, that's taken as a completely separate a stance, devoid of any sort of relation with what is going on with the BJP-led government, and because of that, perhaps also it's difficult to make it more relevant and more concerning for people.
Yes, Sana, you're right about it. And if we obviously talk about overall in India, of course, the tyranny of India is all apparent, and Muslims at large, and of course the other minorities, they are suffering at the hands of Indian tyranny. And since this government, I mean the BJP's government has taken up, I mean they have been extraordinary in their stance over the Muslims and the minorities within India. But at the same time, we talk about Kashmir, of course, since the day one, Kashmir is facing the same brute force which we are seeing, and this was the day in 1947 when it all started. And we need to highlight again and again, and of course I was listening to both of the gentlemen, and they have a lot to do with this struggle, Kashmir struggle, and they have been playing their part. I, with time, earlier Dr. Ahmad Bilal Sufi was mentioned, and I met him twice, and we discussed all about Kashmir. And once when I met him, he was of course with Jahangir as well from the Junagadh. Jahangir Saab, he recently died, and of course Jahangir Khan ji was the current ruler of Junagadh, and Junagadh case is quite similar to Kashmir as well, and same is the case with Hyderabad as well at this partition of Pakistan and India. Of course, what was happened that these states, they were given a sort of self-determination at that time. And if we talk about the letter of accession, I mean the letter of accession of Hari Singh was accepted at that time by India, which later on of course it is a known fact that as he was banished to Hari Singh was banished to Bombay at that time, and he was never seen again in Kashmir and never seen again on media or anywhere. And it is the evidence itself that India did not want him to talk to anyone later on after that. The reason behind it is that of course he was forced, or if he did do it, then he was forced to do it. But if he did not do it, then of course it is something which has no legal meaning, because if we look at that letter of accession at that time, of course there are anomalies within it. And but at the same time, we always keep on forgetting. While I met with Dr. Ahmad Bilal Sufi, if he's watching this program, he would always recall this as well, that I said to him that there shouldn't be two parties in it. It shouldn't be between Pakistan and India only. It should be Britain as well. Britain itself should be a party to it. Why I say it? Because at that time, when we were talking about it, of course, at that time, they had the responsibility of defense of these states. They had the responsibility of the foreign policy of these states, particular states we're talking about, including Kashmir I'm talking about. So if they were not secured, all of these states were not secured, right, then it was not somebody else's fault. I
understand that, Faisal, but we're hardly able to make India relevant in this conversation and have consequences for their actions. Do you think that this is something that's perhaps, is it going to make life any easier, or make the process towards solution any quicker?
Well, talking to India?
No, including Britain in this conversation.
Yeah, why not? Why I'm saying this? Because they were at that time, they were party to it, and of course they should be part of it at this hour as well, because we are talking about millions of people of Kashmir, because they are facing tyranny of India every day, and it is a sort of humanitarian crisis we're talking about. Whenever there is a humanitarian crisis, every possible person that had any relevance to this case should be part of it. Britain should come forward and should be part of it, and they should come not for Pakistan or India, they should come for the humanity. They should come for the millions of people of Kashmir, because they are the ones who are facing the brute force at the hands of Indian tyrant force. And I'm talking about 900,000 troops which they have sent in there. Right now when we're talking about it, of course it is the most militarized zone in the world, and if it is most militarized zone in the world, then I believe a responsible country like Britain should take part in it, and they should be coming forward and of course play their role.
Right. Farrukh, when we talk about the Black Day tomorrow and of course the history of the struggle, and we're talking about 27th October 1947 and now it's 2023, a huge gap between the two, and of course a large number of years have gone by. And I want yes, and I want to understand then that since then till date, the entire world of course has also changed a lot, has also evolved a lot. There is a different way that that things are perceived, that things are communicated, information is spread. So many changes in the way that perhaps the world was back in 1947 than it was today. And so I want to understand that how does that then impact struggles such as that of the people of Kashmir, and whether or not in any way it is perhaps it has opened some avenues or some routes for the people and for countries like Pakistan to explore further that weren't there before, and something that one can use to our advantage to help support the struggle. Is there any way that life today can give that sort of that sort of doorway to the people of Kashmir?
Right, Sana, thank you very much for the question and opportunity. I think that we are observing this dark day tomorrow, the Black Day. By far in 76 years, every year it has grown darker. Yeah. And that is because India is a tyrannical power, as was mentioned, and that is not going to change easily. In India, I mean, there's a blanket consensus that anybody might eventually get rights, especially when it comes to the alliance called India. They are voicing concerns for minorities, others, but Kashmir is one place where they also go mum. And this has been happening for quite some time. Earlier, Ahmad Bilal Sufi was mentioned. He's a dear friend. In this studio, we have had many talks on Kashmir issue, and I think it is because of people like him. It is because of people like Wani Saab and Dr. Wasi that this candle of hope keeps on burning in this gloom. But the problem right now is that there are too many distractions. Remember that there's a difference between a burning, a boiling cauldron and a pressure cooker. Right now, what we are looking at is in Kashmir, there's a pressure cooker that is slowly burning for quite some time. Because the international community keeps on looking at more explosive situations, Gaza, before that Iraq, Afghanistan, whatnot, they are easily distracted. That's why it is very important to keep the focus on these matters. Yeah. And keep the fire burning, the candle burning. And unfortunately, what to talk about international community? Let us actually, charity begins at home. Let us talk about our own media. Right now, next hour, on the hour, when you look at any private channel in Pakistan, you will see a disproportionate coverage of Palestine, right? That is important. I'm not saying it is not important. But every time when Kashmir is under discussion, tomorrow is going to be Kashmir Black Day, right? We will see how much coverage does the private media give. You have 60 channels, or maybe 70, I haven't counted them. And they keep on growing. And their sole purpose was to be, force multiplier of the state. But they're not even paying attention to this, right? Similarly, 76 years. What to talk about, I understand what Dr. Wasi says, that you have to actually create more material in other languages, especially European languages. But my humble submission is when I go to JSTOR, when I go to any publication house's website, and I search Kashmir, the first 10 or 20 books that come out are Indian. The papers also. Why is it that we have stopped producing investing the intellectual capital in this matter, right? So what we need right now is, first of all, we need a Kashmir Study Center in Islamabad, independent, that creates a lot of material on Kashmir, intellectual and academic papers, books, what have you, and then study of language, preservation of Kashmiri culture as well.
Yeah.
Because all the work on culture that seems to be happening is coming from Indian side, whether it is good or bad.
Yeah.
Why? So what we have to do is we have to bide our time. I can give you one example. We keep on looking at places which have been not resolved, Sana, and we keep on telling ourselves that the world is not going to listen to us. But let me take you to South Africa during apartheid. At that time, every colonial power, post-colonial power, was with the apartheid regime. And yet that country, Nelson Mandela and all, they never gave up. And eventually they came out victorious. So why can't we do exactly that? India might be very powerful. Now, Faisal was talking about UK, involving UK. I understand that UK is a stakeholder, and there's incredible admission in private also that they also are responsible. But what is happening, and they have been actually trying behind the scene to do more regarding this issue. But the humble submission is, at this moment, their economy is really in shambles. And because their economy is in shambles, they have to rely on contracts, international contracts like India's. So I don't think at this moment they will be able to do much. But the first principle is, if a tyrant is there, if tyranny is there, endure it and keep standing on your feet. Gandhiji used to actually quote Shelley's poem called Mask of Anarchy. And there you had it, that you keep on enduring till the time the tyrant gets tired and goes away shamefacedly. So what we have to do is stop telling ourselves that we are failing. We are not failing. Okay. The only thing is the world is very cruel.
Yeah.
And if we are standing on our feet, one day we will survive and succeed.
Right, but do you think that there's a higher cost that we have to pay till then?
I hope that there isn't. I hope that we have enough advocacy, that the kind of bizarre and horrible scenes that we have been seeing coming from India, especially blinding of kids, and then umpteen other, tortures that we keep on seeing documented, they stop, and for that you need advocacy. But no matter what, Kashmiris are not flinching. They keep on fighting, Sana. So why am I, a person who's sitting comfortably in Islamabad's studio, why should I flinch? Why should I give up? As long as the last Kashmiri is standing for their rights, I have to stand with them.
Right, absolutely. Wani Sahab, I'll come to you, Faisal. Wani Sahab, the situation then that we see today, and of course with the number of generations that have gone into this struggle, I understand their resilience is there, and it's of course admirable. But in terms of the kind of voices that are needed to influence decisions, to help support this cause, and to talk about and give perhaps more voice to the people of Kashmir, what sort of then hope or expectation does the All-Party Zuriyat Conference, leaders like yourself and others within Kashmir have then from certain organizations, countries or individuals that can perhaps do more at this time, even if it is just about raising their voice?
I think when we talk about the individuals or the organizations raising the voice for the people of Kashmir, there are plenty of people, makers, right, about these Indians are the way are changing the way made Kashmiris from citizens to subjects, and everything is documented, everything is written by the international authors this time. But the only problem which Farrukh was pointing out to you is that international this time's order depends on the scale of economy you have. And the people around the globe, the decision makers, the governments, they have more interest in their economic interests. And those interests they are fulfilling from India. And that's why they keep silent when it comes to accountability of India. Otherwise, there is wealth of information in the United Nations human rights systems to make India accountable for its crimes. There is dearth of information there, and they can be made. But these countries, I already talked. We already talked about then when the Indian UPR was held last time in the Human Rights Council. There was some 366 some advices to India uh, to make its record clear. And we have seen recently when India tried to hold a G20 the tourism summit in Kashmir, the international opinion makers they wrote about it that it was a failed attempt and what India is trying to do to sell a facade of normalcy in Kashmir and what actually is in Kashmir happening. But the stakeholders, which are the big powers, they have their own interests. That's why they are not making India accountable for these. But we are hopeful that the times will come. This was a time, I always say, during early 90s when this movement started, India went throughout the world to defame this freedom struggle, to associate it with terrorism, to say it's a sponsored one. But nobody listened to India till 1995. Gradually, when we became weaker and India became stronger, then India aligned with the Western alliances and also the US, and then thereafter the things start changing. So, on one hand, what Dr. Wasi said, we have to produce the literature, we have to see the resistance literature which are producing, and what Farrukh said that we have not done so much for a long time in our academia, in our research centers, and all that. That needs to be done, and along with that, media. For tomorrow, I have to speak in 12 webinars. But I was thinking, what should I say? The only thing which came to my mind is that you have to be a storyteller to tell the people what is happening and to the future generations keep on telling them, keep on documenting these things and disseminate this information. But unfortunately, what India has done against us, what India is doing, their all media channels or their all print or electronic media, they are spreading the fake news around the globe. They are spreading whatever they want to about Pakistan or about the Kashmir's freedom struggle. But where is our media? Where,
Right.
where, where from we can build our narrative? The Indian narrative is selling because they have their mouths to say, but we don't have those things to do that. Our private media channels, there's only one channel, that's this PTV world where we speak in English. The other languages are nowhere there. But Indians
Yeah.
do dub each and every news, each and every propaganda in Arabic, in Spanish, in French, in other languages, and they sell it to the international audience and thereby make their inroads. We have to do that. We have to invest in that. That is the only way to reach out those constituencies.
Right, absolutely. And Dr. Awais, I want to also understand how important it is for voices within India as well to be able to garner support for the people of the occupied territory, and in light of the kind of actions that exist from the BJP against any voice that is against the government or is in support of the freedom struggle of the people of Kashmir seems to be crushed. But I want to then understand whether or not this support is absolutely essential and should actually be targeted when we talk about media or the kind of information that needs to be there. And secondly, with the UN Security Council resolutions in place, of course, and the entire body also looking after such issues, one would expect that there's some value that this actually holds. How exactly then will that be taken into account, given the fact that so many years have passed without actually any action being taken and with complete impunity to the Indian occupation forces?
Okay, coming to this second question that you have just asked about United Nations resolutions, I think it is still relevant, and the lapse of time or the passage of time does not invalidate any international agreement or any United Nations resolutions for that matter. So, in this context, that United Nations Charter Section 99 also I think it ought to be invoked and it should be shared in writing that the Secretary General can invoke Article 99 that if there is any threat to the global peace or regional peace, so United Nations must play its role. And secondly, when this conflict is there that is surrounded by three nuclear powers, so it becomes imperative, it becomes extremely significant that United Nations must be compelled to exercise its role to maintain peace, for which this organization has been established in the very first place. So I think that this must be done. Secondly, about the within India, I think that there is a lot of space within India to create a constituency in favor for Kashmiris. And there was a realization in 2000, after 2008, even in the leadership of APHC and other quarters, that Indian intelligentsia should be approached. And they have started going and started approaching Indian constituency. You must have remembered that Gilani Saab has visited, and later, previously, Mirwais Umar Farrukh and Yasin Malik Saab, they had also visited some Indian places where they wanted to address some seminars, but it couldn't take place. So I think that, and in India, there is a silver line I can see also, as we see some of the scholars of Indian origin. For example, Angana Chatterjee is there, Ajit Sai, who was editor of Telka, and Arundhati Rai is a quite famous name. And there are many such authors, such writers. I think they must be encouraged to write more and to produce a discourse. It could be a digital or a written discourse on Kashmir. So I think that that constituency must be approached and that constituency must be expanded. And another thing that I would like to point out here is that there is a difference between Hinduism and Hindutva. And we should not condemn or we should not formulate our policy in such a way that that leads to the condemnation of Hinduism as a religion. Our policy should be directed towards this political construct that is Hindutva, and we should reach in Indian constituency not on the basis of this religion, as in the previous art discourse, especially in 1990s, there was a kind of religious discourse that was dominant. So I think that there should be a clear distinction that ought to be made between Hinduism and Hindutva, and Hinduism should not be condemned in our discourse or in our
Dr. Awais, thank you very much. We're almost out of time, but thank you very much for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Also, thank you very much, Dr. Altaf and Wani Saab, also to join us and being part of the discussion. Of course, Farrukh and Faisal for being part of the show as always. That's all we have from the debate, and we hope that the struggle of the Kashmiri people ends sooner rather than later. It's been already too long and too many people have suffered, and we can only hope that their voice is heard and the international community decides to do something about it. Pakistan, of course, will keep on extending its own support, and we'll be observing the Black Day tomorrow. That's all that we have from the show. We'll see you tomorrow.